12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. I have said that sentence out loud 41 times, and on the 42nd she watched my mouth the whole way through it. Hello you. Coat off, phone down, you're home. I know that room. I know the exact dark it is right now, and I know you've got work in the morning and you're going to listen to one more anyway. So, where in the world is your ceiling tonight? Put the city in the comments and I'll come and find you. And if you'd like me here every week, there's a button under this. Press it. It costs you nothing and it keeps me in your evenings. Now, let's rewind. It was a Friday morning in a top-floor workroom, and I was about to say a sentence out loud for the 42nd time. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. That's it. That's the whole sentence. I'd said it 41 times before, and it had never cost me anything. And I want you to understand that before I tell you the rest. Because otherwise you'll think I'm the kind of person who was waiting for something. I wasn't waiting. I was on hold with a florist. Here's a thing about me you should know early. I count. Not on purpose. It's how I was trained. You count sheets, you count losses, you count how many times a spine has been re-sewn before somebody handed the wreck of it to us. So I knew it was 42 the way you know your own shoe size. Without effort. Without asking why anybody would. 42 Fridays of ordering flowers for a woman I'd met twice. The room was the color it always was, which is the color of 4 in the afternoon, whether or not it's 4 in the afternoon. North light. No sun, ever, because sun eats paper. Dust going around in it very slowly, the way dust does when nobody's moved in a while. Nobody had moved in a while. I had the phone against my ear and my back to the bench, and behind me, 2 meters away, Harriet Byrne was working. Harriet Byrne is the person I work for. Book and paper conservator, 38 years old, buttons her sleeves at the wrist in a room where nobody would care if she didn't. I say her full name like that because for 11 months that's what she was to me. Ms. Byrne, 2 words, like a door frame. You could stand in it, but you couldn't go through. The florist picked up. And I said it. 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial. Same as the 41 before. Except, I turned around at some point during it. I don't remember choosing to. And she'd stopped. Scalpel down, hands flat on the bench either side of the work like she was holding it still, which she wasn't, because it didn't need holding. She was watching my mouth, not my face. I know the difference. I've spent 11 months 2 feet from that woman learning the difference between being looked at and being cataloged, and this was neither. She watched the sentence come out of me the entire way through, from 12 to initial, without one blink I can account for. And then the florist asked me to confirm the address and I turned back around like a coward. I want to be fair to her. She's the most exact person I've ever been in a room with. She corrects things. She probably heard me get a street name wrong and was waiting for me to fix it. That's what I told myself. It held for about 5 days. So let me take you back to the Monday, because the Monday is where it actually starts, and because if I begin at the end, you'll believe me too easily. Monday, 8:10, the studio, and the paste was still warm enough to smell like a school kitchen. That's wheat starch paste. You cook it fresh every morning in a little pan, and by evening it's dead and you throw it out. First thing I ever learned in that room. If you can still smell it, it's still early. It was still early. Harriet Byrne, the woman I work for, the one with the sleeves, was already there. She's always already there. In 11 months, I never once beat her up those stairs, and I've tried, and I take the bus that gets in 22 minutes early to try. Morning, Ms. Byrne. Nothing. A sound, not a word. That's a full conversation. I'd stopped expecting more. There was 1 cup of tea on the bench, hers, made for one, drunk by one, the way it had been every morning since I started. I want to be honest about the shape of the day, because the shape is the whole thing. 1 bench, 2 chairs, a 140-year-old sheet of laid paper that had been sitting in a damp Suffolk cellar since before either of us was a plan anyone had. And paperwork is 2-handed and 1-personed. That's the trade. 1 person works and 1 person holds. The corner, the light, the breath. That's my job. My job is being within arm's reach of Harriet Byrne and not moving. You can get very good at not moving. I was working the split along the bottom edge and I had the bone folder wrong. Bone folder's just a flat piece of bone you use to work a crease. Simple tool. There's one grip for it and I don't have a good reason for not using it. That's a lie. I have a reason. 3 weeks. I'd been holding it wrong for 3 weeks. Number. She was up off her stool before I'd registered the word. Not annoyed. She's never annoyed. That's the thing about her that people get wrong. They think exact means cold, and exact isn't cold. Exact is just fast. Not like that. You'll bruise the fiber. And then her hand came over mine. Palm across my knuckles. Fingers finding the folder underneath and turning it maybe 15 degrees, which is nothing, which is a correction so small that the whole apprenticeship is learning it can't be described in words. 3 seconds of that, instruction, genuinely. And then 4 seconds where nothing happened. I have gone over those 4 seconds more times than I have gone over anything in my life. She didn't move her hand, I didn't move mine. The correction was finished. The folder was where it was meant to be. There was no reason on earth for her palm to still be on my knuckles. Her hand was cooler than mine, marble in an unheated church. She works with a cold room and a lamp and no sun, and her hands take the temperature of the building. Mine were about 100 degrees. I could smell the paste. I could smell the dry paper smell of her sleeve. And I was aware, the way you're aware of a step that isn't there, that if I turned my head 6 inches, I'd be looking straight at the side of her face. I did not turn my head. Then the hygrometer clicked. That's the humidity unit on the wall. It corrects itself every 11 minutes with a small mechanical sound. In a quiet room, you count them without deciding to. I have never been so glad of a machine. We both looked at it, both of us, like it had said something. Her hand was back on her side of the bench by the time we looked away, and I couldn't have told you when it left. Better, she said, and sat down. I said thank you. I don't know why I said thank you. She had a 15-minute call at 11 with a man about a family Bible and I'd booked it. I book everything. I'm the studio's calendar and its post and its supply orders, and I've been all 3 since my 2nd week. Which means I can tell you this as a fact, not a feeling. Iris is in that calendar under her own color. She has been since before I got there. Iris is Harriet's partner. 9 years, no ring, no paperwork, nothing. Just 9 years. She's a physiotherapist. She teaches children to walk again after the worst thing that's ever happened to them. There are 41 entries in that calendar with her name on them, and one of them is a standing order that runs every Friday at 11. I typed most of them in myself. So, 8:20 on a Monday, 2 hands coming apart over a sheet of paper, and a small mechanical click. Nothing happened. I need you to hear that. Nothing happened at all. I put the folder down after she'd gone back to her stool. Carefully. I sat with my hands in my lap long enough to hear the machine go again. Then I picked it up and held it exactly the way she'd shown me. Same Monday, 3:30 in the afternoon, and the light in that room never tells you anything. North facing, no sun ever, because sun eats paper. You cannot tell what time it is by looking. You can only tell by the paste. The paste was going off. That's how I knew it was late. We'd been at it 6 hours by then, me and Harriet Byrne. She's the conservator, the woman I work for, the one who'd put her hand over mine that morning and then said better and sat back down. 6 hours, 1 bench, about 2 feet of air. I'd said maybe 9 words since. Here's a thing I've never told anybody, and I'm going to tell you, because I told her. Or I nearly did, which turned out to be a different thing entirely. You can find where a reader stopped. It's the dirt, skin oil, mostly, and whatever's in the air of whatever house it sat in. It builds up in the gutter. That's the ditch where the 2 pages meet at the spine, and it builds up in proportion to how often the book was open at that place. So the gutter gets cleaner as you go through, gradually, page after page, less and less hand. And then there's a line. 1 page where the dirt stops, where somebody put it down on the arm of a chair and meant to come back and never did. Page 60. Page 12. Page 340 once, which is the saddest one I've ever found, because they'd nearly finished. I can find it in about 4 seconds. I have never once said that out loud to a living person. Not at the diploma. Not to my flatmate. I sublet a box room off a woman who works nights, and I've seen her 4 times. Not to anyone. But it was 3:30, and the paste was turning, and she was working the same split I'd been holding the corner of all day, and I heard myself, "Can I show you something stupid?" And she looked up. I want to be careful here, because I've had a long time to make this into more than it was. She looked up and she half turned on the stool. Towards me, shoulders following her head, which is the part I keep. A person can look up without turning. She turned. And the stairs went. Foley. He's the other half of the studio, the bookbinder. He's 51, and he's deaf in his left ear, and he has never in his life noticed a single thing happening in a room. He came up talking. He was already 3 sentences in when his head cleared the floor. Something about Suffolk, a valuation, a dead man's library, the family wanting to know what it's worth. He always comes in with his good ear last, so you get a man's back and a stream of words and no way in. Nell. Nell, are you listening? Tuesday or Wednesday, I don't mind which. 11 minutes. I timed it, because I count, because that's what I do instead of speaking. 11 minutes of Suffolk. He'd brought sandwiches and he put them on the bench and he never once looked at either of us. And Harriet had turned back to the work by minute 2. That's it. That's the beat. My one thing, the only interesting thing about me, and it got as far as something stupid before a kind man came up some stairs. I never finished the sentence. Not that day, not that week. It sat there. That's the honest word for it. It sat on that bench like the sandwiches did, unopened, going stale, in the way. Foley left at 4 with his coat half on. I looked at the sandwiches, she looked at the paper, and I thought, she doesn't know what you were going to say, so she can't want to hear it. So nothing has been lost. That thought is a machine for staying where you are. I'd been running it for 11 months. Tuesday morning, before 9, and there were 2 cups on the bench instead of 1. I stopped in the doorway with my coat still on. 11 months. I want to be precise about this, because precision is the only religion in that building. 11 months of 1 cup. Hers, made for 1, drunk by 1, the mug going cold at her elbow while she worked past the point of remembering it existed. 2 cups. The second one on my side of the bench, left of the lamp, where I'd have to reach across nothing to get it. Harriet Byrne, the conservator, the woman I work for, did not look up. Morning. Nothing. That's it. That's the entire acknowledgement I ever got. I hung my coat up. I took a long time hanging my coat up. And then I did the only thing available to a person in that situation, which was to walk over and pick it up and drink it as though this had always been how it worked. It was cold. Not cool, cold. Made and left and gone over completely, which meant it had been standing there a long time before I got in, and I get in early, and I get in earlier than anyone. She'd made it right, though. That's the part that got me under the ribs. Not strong. Milk in first or milk in last, I don't know, but the color was right, and nobody gets the color right for somebody by accident. She'd made it right and then she'd let it die on the bench. So I couldn't tell you what it was. Whether she'd made it warm for me and forgotten I take an hour to arrive, or whether she'd made it at 6 in the morning for reasons of her own and then couldn't be bothered to say so. I didn't say thank you. I want you to understand why, because it's going to matter later, and I need you to not think I was ungrateful. If I said thank you, then it was a thing. If it was a thing, it had a size, and a reason, and it could be discussed. And if it could be discussed, then it could be stopped. She could say, "Oh, sorry, I just made too much." Then I'd say, "Of course." Then there'd only ever be one again. So I drank it cold and said nothing and got on with the work. That's what I mean about not moving. You get very good at it. We did the bottom edge of the Suffolk sheet. She works, and I hold. 2 feet, 1 lamp, the humidity unit clicking every 11 minutes on the wall. I waited all day. That's not a metaphor. I had a specific expectation that at some point, over the sandwiches, or when she stood up to stretch her back, or at 6 when we packed the work away, she'd say something about the tea. 1 sentence. Thought you might want one. Anything. She didn't. And here's the fact, because you should have the fact and not just how I felt about a mug. I'm on a 9-month rolling contract. I've got a conservation diploma and about 4 years left of paying for it. There are 4 studios in this city that do what we do. I wrote to all 4. Foley, the bookbinder, the other half of the place, was the only one who wrote back, and he wrote back because somebody he knew died and left him more work than he could hold. That's the whole of my position. 9 months at a time, rolling, at the discretion of 2 people, one of whom had just put a cup of tea on the bench without explanation and then let it go cold. I drank it standing up. I could have sat. There's a chair. The chair is at the bench, and the bench is where the work is, and I'd been sitting in it since 8 o'clock the previous morning. But sitting down with a mug is a different distance to standing with one, about 16 inches different. I did the sums without doing them. So I stood at the end of the bench like somebody who'd come in to deliver a message, and I drank cold tea somebody had made me, and I watched the top of her head while she worked. Tuesday night, the bus that gets in 22 minutes early, and a box room I rent off a stranger I've met 4 times. There are 2 buses. One arrives 4 minutes late and one arrives 22 minutes early, and I have taken the early one every working day of my life. Not because I'm good, because being early is free. Late costs you. Late is a conversation, and an explanation, and somebody upstairs deciding whether they believe you. Early is standing in a doorway in the cold for 22 minutes with nobody watching. I'd rather stand. That's the whole of my financial philosophy, and it fits on a bus timetable. So, Tuesday, 7:15, top deck, window seat, coat still smelling of wheat starch paste. That's the stuff we cook fresh every morning to mend paper with, and it gets into everything, and it smells like a school kitchen. I got in and the flat was dark. I sublet a box room off a woman who works nights. 4 times. That's how many times we've been in the same room in 14 months, and 2 of them were the handover. She's not unfriendly, she's just on the other side of the clock from me. There's a note system on the fridge, and the notes are polite, and neither of us has ever written more than 11 words. The kettle's hers. I bought my own mug so there'd be no discussion about mugs. I made tea. It was fine. It was completely fine. I've made my own tea since I was 9 years old, and there is nothing wrong with it. I stood in a dark kitchen at 20 to 8 and drank it, and it tasted like nothing at all. That's the thing nobody warns you about being 25 and skint in a city. It's not the money. The money's boring. You get quite good at the money, you learn which bus, you learn the diploma is going to take another 4 years, and you stop looking at the number. That part becomes admin. It's that nobody knows what you take. There is not one person within 6 miles of that flat who could tell you how I have my tea. Not one. That had been true for 14 months, and I had never once thought about it, not once, until somebody put a cup on a bench and got the color right. I sat on my bed with my coat on. The room's about 9 feet by 7. There's a window, and outside it there's another window, and that's the view. And at some point, I'm not proud of this, I got my phone out and opened the calendar. Not for Tuesday, not for the next day's work. Friday. There it is, 11 o'clock. Recurring, weekly, no end date, entered by me in my second week off a piece of paper Foley gave me. Friday flowers, standing order. And the reminder was set for 10:30. I stopped. Because I wrote that entry, and when I wrote it, I set the reminder for 11:15, which is what I do for everything, because 1/4 of an hour is what a task needs. 10:30 is 30 minutes. I don't remember changing it. I have no memory of it at all, but nobody else in that building has ever opened my calendar, which means that at some point in the last 11 months I gave myself 15 extra minutes of Friday morning, quietly, without deciding to, and then forgot I'd done it. I looked at it for a while. I didn't change it back. I put the phone face down on the duvet, which is a thing I'd started doing so I couldn't see the screen light up, and I lay back with my coat still on, and the ceiling 4 feet from my face. There was no bench, there was no lamp. There was no small mechanical click every 11 minutes. Nobody had made me anything. Thursday lunchtime, sandwich day, and Harriet Byrne, the conservator, the woman I work for, 38, sleeves buttoned at the wrist, slid one across the bench without looking up. She hadn't said an unnecessary word since Monday. Thursday is sandwiches because Foley brings them. That's the bookbinder. 51, deaf in the left ear, brings 4 sandwiches every Thursday whether or not he intends to stay. That week he didn't stay. Bag on the bench, something about a courier, gone. 4 sandwiches. 2 of them are the plain ones, 1 is cheese, and 1 has the pickle. I like the pickle one. I have never said that. Not to Foley, not to her, not to anybody in that building or any other. It's not a secret. It's a thing so small there's no occasion on which a person would say it out loud. She didn't look up. Her scalpel didn't stop. She reached into the bag with her left hand, took out the one with the pickle, and put it down on my side of the lamp. And went on working. I looked at it for a while. Then I opened my mouth to ask how she knew, and I want to be clear that the question was fully formed. It was a real question and I had it in my mouth. How long have you known what I eat? And her phone lit up on the bench. It lay face up. It always lay face up. 9 hours a day, screened to the ceiling, because she has nothing to hide from anybody and never had. 2 feet away, I didn't lean. You don't have to lean at 2 feet. Iris. Dentist 4 o'clock. Don't forget. Iris. 9 years, those 2. She's a physiotherapist, and she works with children who are learning to walk again after the worst thing that has ever happened to them. And I know about the dentist because I booked the dentist. I book everything. I'm the calendar and the post and the supply orders, and I've been all 3 since my 2nd week. I have her date of birth memorized off a form. I know she can't take codeine. I know the front door of that flat sticks in the wet because I once had a courier hold for 40 minutes while I explained it. 41 entries in that calendar with her name on them. One of them is a standing order every Friday at 11. The screen went dark. Neither of us turned it over. And that's when Harriet looked at me. 1 glance. Half a second, maybe less. Up off the work, across the lamp, to my face, and then back down. She didn't look at the phone. She didn't need to. She'd seen where I was looking and she'd worked out what was on it, and both of those things happened in the time it takes to blink twice. Nothing changed in her face. Nothing ever changes in her face. She's got a face like a closed door in a good building. You can tell it's well made and you can tell it isn't opening. But she looked. 11 months of that woman looking at paper. 11 months of me being furniture with hands. And on Thursday lunchtime she looked up, because she wanted to know what I'd seen. I ate the sandwich. What else was I going to do? I ate the sandwich she'd chosen for me, 2 feet from a phone with another woman's name on it, and I said thank you, and she said nothing at all, and we went back to the Suffolk sheet. I never asked how she knew. I've thought since that there are only 2 answers, and neither is good for me. Either she noticed a year ago and filed it, the way she files everything, or she asked Foley. I have never worked out which one I'd rather. Thursday, later, 4:30, maybe, and Harriet Byrne, the woman I work for, finally noticed the card that had been pinned over my side of the bench for 10 months. She hadn't said 20 words since the sandwich. The card's a birthday card. It's got a badly drawn bird on it. Not badly drawn by a person, badly drawn by a printer. Some sort of finch, orange, cheerful in a way that's almost aggressive. It's been on that wall since my 1st month. She stopped, scalpel down, head tilted about 10 degrees the way she does when she's reading something at a bad angle. Did she send you that? And there was a half-second. I want to be honest about the half-second, because I've had a long time to think about whether I imagined it. She said she, Not the name, just she, like there was only one, which there is. That's Iris, Harriet's partner, 9 years, the one who posts things. And in that half second, the question could have gone somewhere. Did she send you that has a follow-up in it? Why do you keep it? Do you like her? What's it like, being on the outside of us, looking in at the wallpaper? Then Harriet answered it herself. That's her. That's exactly her. And her face did something. I need to describe this properly, because it's the coldest thing that happened to me all week, and it looks, written down, like nothing at all. The door opened. That's the only way I can put it. She's got a face like a closed door in a good building. And for about 2 seconds it was open, and there was a whole room behind it. Warm, lived in, somebody else's. She was thinking about Iris, fondly, 2 feet from me. She does that, she said. Every year. Posts them. She won't do it on a phone. I know. Course you do. Back to the work. You're in the diary. You're in the diary. I laughed. Out loud. Actually laughed. Because it was funny. Because it is funny. I'm the calendar. I book everything. I'm in my own diary as an entry that a kind woman sets a reminder for. And I meant the laugh. That's the thing. I want you to know I wasn't performing. Because here's what I've never told anybody. And it's not flattering. That card is the only handwritten thing anyone has sent me since I moved to this city. 14 months. 1 card. From my boss's girlfriend who has met me 4 times, who spells my name right, who put a stamp on it. You don't take a thing like that off a wall. So I said, she's lovely, and I meant it. And Harriet said, she is. And that was the whole conversation. Then she went back to the suffix sheet, that's the 140-year-old paper we'd been at all week, and she worked for about an hour and a half. Smiling at nothing. Not at me, not at anything in the room. Just the small thing a face does when it's been reminded of somebody it lives with. And here's what I have to tell you, because I said I'd be honest, and this is the part I'd rather leave out. It was a nice afternoon. It was one of the nicest afternoons I'd had in a year. She was easier after that. She hummed something at one point. She asked me twice for things instead of reaching past me. The room was warm because she was thinking about somebody who loves her, and I sat in that warmth for 4 hours holding a corner of paper flat with 1 finger. And I was happy. That's what I can't get round. Not jealous. Happy. Warming myself at a fire that was lit for somebody else, and enjoying it. And not once, not for a second, wanting it put out. I looked at the finch on the wall. 4 hours to 6 o'clock, and I'd have taken 8. Friday, 4 minutes to 11, and I was holding the phone waiting for her to tell me what to write. This is the standing order. Every Friday, 11 o'clock, entered in the calendar in my 2nd week off a piece of paper Foley gave me. That's the bookbinder, the other half of the studio, 51, deaf in 1 ear, 12 stems, no lilies, signed with the initial, and a message. That's the bit that's hers. 3 words, sometimes 4. She says them, I write them down, I read them to the florist writes them on a small card, and a van takes them across the city. They go to Iris, Harriet's partner, 9 years, the physiotherapist. The message has never changed much. Always the same shape. Warm, short, slightly formal, the way a person is when they've said a thing so often it's become a stone they touch on the way past. Signed with 1 letter. Just the H. She's never once signed a whole name. I asked, in month 2. She said a whole name is a claim. I don't know what that means. I've thought about it for 42 weeks. So, 4 minutes to 11. I had the phone in my hand and the number up, and I said what I always say. Message. And she didn't look up. You know what to put. I stood there. I want to slow this down, because it went past very fast. She said it the way you'd say, put it on the pile, flat, mid-cut. Her scalpel didn't stop moving, not once. No pause before it and no pause after it, and she went straight on into the next thing she was doing. She wasn't giving me anything. That's what I understood about 4 seconds later. She was putting something down. It was a task. It had become a task, and she'd got to the point in 9 years where the task could be handed to the person who does the tasks. 4 words a week. That's what she'd been keeping hold of. She got tired, and she gave it to me the way you'd hand somebody a bag while you find your keys. 12 stems, I said. No lilies. Not, are you sure? Not, I don't think I should. Not, do you know what you're asking me to do? Because she didn't, and because I couldn't have finished that sentence in that room in that lifetime. 12 stems, no lilies. That's what I said. She didn't answer. Let me give you the arithmetic, because I'm better with arithmetic than with the other thing. 9 years, those 2. The standing order's been running for 4 of them. That's flowers arriving on a Friday afternoon at a flat where the front door sticks in the wet, every week for 4 years, without 1 week missed. I've checked. I'm the calendar, and I check. 42 of those weeks are mine. 41, I read her words down a phone. The florist picked up on the second ring. I know her voice. I've never met her, and I know her voice better than my own flatmates. She asked for the message, and there was a silence on that line that went on too long. My back to the bench. A woman 2 meters behind me, working, and a stranger waiting for me to invent 4 words of tenderness for somebody I'd met 4 times. Still Friday, still 11 o'clock, still on the phone, and my voice was completely steady. That's the part I'd like on the record. Steady. Not a wobble in it. If you'd been in the room, you'd have heard a young woman ordering flowers, and nothing else, and you'd have gone back to whatever you were doing. The florist was waiting. And here's the thing I didn't expect, which is that I was good at it. I knew what to put. That's the horror. I stood there with a phone against my ear, and I found that I had everything I needed. All of it. Filed. Without ever having decided to keep any of it. I knew no lilies. I've typed no lilies 41 times, and I know why. Iris lost her mother 8 years ago, and the church was full of them. I know that because I once had to move a Tuesday for the anniversary. I knew the hallway. There's a hallway in that flat with a narrow table in it, and that's where they go, because a courier once described it to me while I was explaining that the front door sticks in the wet. I knew she'd look at it twice. Iris looks at things twice. She's the sort of person who keeps a card in a drawer. So I gave her something worth keeping. 4 words. I'm not going to say them to you. I've said them once, and they went to somebody else, and that's where they live now. But I'll tell you what was wrong with them. They were true. Not true about Harriet, and not true about Iris, and not a message from one of those women to the other. They came out of me. They were the truest 4 words I'd put together in 14 months, and I said them out loud in a room with dust going around in the light, and a woman I couldn't see wrote them down and put them on a small card, signed with the initial, just the H. Because a whole name is a claim apparently, and she's never made one. The florist said them back to me. That was the worst part, and it lasted 3 seconds. Somebody else's mouth, saying my sentence, in the past tense already, on its way to a hallway table. Yeah, I said. That's it. I'd type them into my drafts first, to get the order right. I do that with anything I have to say out loud, because I'm a person who reads things back, because if you check it, you can't have got it wrong. I deleted the draft while she was still confirming the address. Thumb, hold, delete, gone. Didn't look at it again. I want to be clear that I did that straight away, and not later after some agonized half hour, because it wasn't a decision. It was closer to putting your hand off a hot thing. And then I stood there. Nothing in the room had changed. The paste was still warm, so it was still early. The humidity unit clicked on the wall. 2 meters behind me, a woman was working who had asked me, without looking up, to do that. And I understood something standing there, in a very plain way, without any drama about it, the way you understand you've missed a step. I hadn't been doing her a favor. 11 months I'd told myself I was being useful. Useful is safe. Useful is a job description. Useful means you can hold a corner of paper flat for somebody for 9 hours a day and go home on an early bus and there's nothing in it. but you can't write somebody's love and keep calling it filing. The line went dead against my ear. Then the message came through. 4 minutes past 11. Your order has been received. Friday, 4 minutes past 11, and I turned around still holding the phone. That's all I was doing. Turning round. Get back to the bench. Get back to the corner of the suffix sheet. That's the 140-year-old paper we'd been at all week. Get the day back on its rails before anybody had to acknowledge anything. The van goes out at 1, if you want the logistics. Flowers reach that flat by 2:30. The one with the door that sticks in the wet, the hallway with the narrow table. 12 stems, no lilies. 4 words I wrote, signed with a letter that isn't mine. And on Monday morning, Iris will ring the studio to say thank you. She always does. That's the arithmetic. Now here's the rest of it. Harriet had stopped. Harriet Byrne, the conservator, the woman I work for. 38, sleeves buttoned at the wrist, hands flat on the bench either side of the work like she was holding it still. It didn't need holding. She was watching my mouth. I told you this already. I told you at the start, before I told you anything else, because it's the only part that matters. I just didn't tell you what she did next. Here's what people do when you catch them. They look down. They reach for a tool. They ask you something about the work, or they laugh, or they make a small noise and go back to what they were doing, and both of you agree without discussing it that nothing occurred. I've been looked at and lost by about 100 people. It takes half a second and it costs nobody anything. She didn't do it. She held it. 4 seconds. Maybe 5. I counted, because I count, because it's what I do instead of speaking. I want to tell you it was longer. I'd be lying, and I've decided not to lie about any of this. 4 seconds is a very long time. Her face didn't change. It never does. Closed door in a good building. But she was looking at me, and she'd chosen to go on looking, past the point where either of us could pretend it was accidental. She did it the way she corrects a grip. 15 degrees, hand over knuckles, no explanation, deliberate. That's the word. And what came through me wasn't warmth. I want to be accurate. It was the sensation of a floor not quite where you'd put your foot. Because if she was looking at me on purpose, then she'd been able to, the whole time. 11 months. Every morning I got up early for. Every 2 feet of air I sat in without moving. She could have looked at any point and she hadn't. Now she had. Which meant it had been a choice the entire way through. Both of us knew. That's what I walked out of that room with. Not that I knew. I'd known for months, the way you know about a noise in a wall. That she knew. And that she knew I'd seen her know. Nothing was said. I put the phone in my coat pocket. I went back to the bench and sat down in the chair, which is 16 inches closer than standing, and I did the sums without doing them, and I sat in it anyway. I put my finger on the corner of the paper. Suffolk. Is that Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday. Tuesday, I said, because I read things back. And she picked up the scalpel. We worked until 6. Neither of us said one thing that wasn't about paper. The humidity unit went every 11 minutes. And I sat 2 feet from a woman who had looked at me on purpose, for 4 seconds, after 11 months of not. I have never wanted a Monday less in my life.